How many of you actually believe in the universal law of attraction? Okay. So I didn't for 22 years because I'm a scientist. My background is in clinical research and mortality, so I didn't believe in that law until one day I was studying a law in physics. And you're welcome to look this up. It's called constructive interference. Well, constructive interference. It's a law in physics that is as valid as the law of gravity. What constructive interference says is that if two frequencies of equal wavelength meet, the size of the frequency doubles. That's a fact.
Can your thoughts really shape your reality? It's a question that sounds almost like magic, but it's one that scientists, philosophers, and spiritual thinkers have been asking for ages. Welcome to today's episode, where we dive into the fascinating story of the scientist who discovered the power of energy. Thoughts become things. In this journey, we'll explore how the power of thought has captivated human minds from ancient sages to modern scientists. We'll see what science says about the energy of our thoughts, how our brains physically change with the way we think, and what that means for wellness, aging, and personal growth. By the end, you'll not only understand the history and science behind the famous idea that thoughts become things, but you'll also learn practical ways to harness your own thoughts for a happier, healthier life. Stick around because we're blending science, history, and practical tips in one epic story that just might change how you think about thinking. Humans have always wondered about the power of the mind. Long before modern science, ancient philosophers and spiritual teachers believed that thoughts could influence reality. For example, in ancient India, the Buddha is often quoted as saying, "All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make the world." In other words, the idea that mind shapes experience has been around for millennia. Similarly, in ancient Greek-Egyptian philosophy, the Hermetic teachings proclaimed all is mind, the universe is mental. This was a principle suggesting that the universe itself might be a kind of mental or spiritual construct influenced by consciousness. From east to west, we find this universal question: do our thoughts, intentions, or prayers somehow affect what happens to us? People noticed that when they stayed positive, life seemed to go better, and when they dwelled on negativity, things seemed to get worse. Even if they didn't have modern terminology, early thinkers sensed a mysterious connection between mind and reality. They asked, could it be that what we think in our minds eventually becomes the reality we live in? So, the curiosity about thoughts become things isn't new at all. It's a question that has been echoing in human hearts and minds since ancient times. And as we'll see, this idea traveled through history and picked up momentum in some surprising ways. Fast forward to the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The industrial age was booming, science was advancing, and yet a group of thinkers and writers were turning inward, exploring the mind's influence on health and success. This was the birth of the New Thought movement, essentially the original mind power or self-help movement that gave us the earliest explicit expressions of thoughts become things. One key figure was Prentice Mulford, a pioneering author whose 1880s essays boldly claimed that our thoughts are real forces. In fact, Mulford used the motto, "Thoughts are things," making it a centerpiece of early New Thought philosophy. Around the same time, Ralph Waldo Trine wrote In Tune with the Infinite, 1897, spreading the idea that a person's thoughts attract either good or bad outcomes. Trine and others believed that by harmonizing our thoughts with a positive, infinite intelligence, we shape our reality. Then came Thomas Troward, an English judge turned metaphysical philosopher. Troward's lectures in the early 1900s delved into how mind and matter relate, influencing later teachers with his blend of logic and mysticism. And we can't forget William Walker Atkinson, who in 1906 published Thought Vibration, or the Law of Attraction in the Thought World. Atkinson wrote, "Thought is a force, a manifestation of energy, having a magnet-like power of attraction." Think about that. He saw thought itself as a form of energy that could attract things to you, almost like a magnet pulling in your life circumstances. These New Thought writers were the ones who really popularized the phrase and concept that thoughts become things. Their books, pamphlets, and lectures suggested that if you focus on something strongly in your mind, be it success, health, or happiness, your life will start aligning to make it real. This idea spread into what we now call the self-help or personal development industry. By the mid-20th century, motives like Think and Grow Rich, the title of Napoleon Hill's famous 1937 book, and As a Man Thinketh, a 1903 essay by James Allen, echoing the biblical proverb, all carried the same core message. Your thoughts play a powerful role in creating your reality. By the modern era, thoughts become things became a popular mantra in wellness and spiritual circles, championed by speakers like Mike Dooley, who often uses that exact phrase in his teachings. But is there any science behind it? Could our ancestors have been onto something real about the nature of thought and reality? To find out, we need to venture into the realm of science, from quantum physics to the wiring of our brains. Let's talk science, and don't worry, we'll keep it simple and fascinating. First, consider this. Everything around you, the solid world of matter, is actually made of energy at the tiniest level. Modern physics tells us that atoms, once thought to be hard little billiard balls, are actually mostly empty space with energetic particles and forces. Over 100 years ago, physicist Max Planck, the father of quantum theory, made a statement that stunned people. He said, "There is no matter as such. All matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force." We must assume behind this force the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter. That's a Nobel Prize-winning scientist suggesting that consciousness is fundamental to reality, underlying the energy that makes up the material world. Now, quantum physics also brought us the famous observer effect. What is that? In simple terms, experiments have shown that the mere act of observing a quantum particle, like an electron, can change how it behaves. In one classic setup called the double-slit experiment, if no one or no device is watching, electrons can act like waves and do all sorts of wiggly, spread-out things. But the moment you measure or observe them going through slits, they decide to act like solid particles and land in one spot. In other words, nature behaves differently when it's being observed. This isn't to say a human must be staring at it. Even a detector machine counts as an observer, but it raised a mind-bending question. Does consciousness influence the physical world? If a simple act of measurement changes reality at the quantum level, some have speculated that our intentions or attention might affect reality as well. Now, mainstream scientists will caution us. Quantum effects in the lab don't directly prove that mere thinking can move mountains in everyday life. There's a lot of hype out there, and we should be careful about literal interpretations. Thoughts become things might not mean you can instantly manifest a cup of coffee just by thinking of it. Instead, many scientists and philosophers take it more metaphorically or indirectly. Your thoughts set off chains of actions and reactions that eventually shape your world. But here's what's fascinating. Science does show that mind and matter are deeply intertwined. We see hints that reality isn't as hard and separate from us as we once believed. Energy is the currency of the universe, and remarkably, our thoughts are a form of energy too. Electrical impulses zapping through our neurons. So, scientifically speaking, we've learned that everything is energy at a fundamental level. Matter equals energy. There's an interplay between observer and observed. Reality at the micro level is not fixed until interaction/observation happens. Some prominent scientists like Planck have openly mused that mind might be behind the fabric of reality. These ideas crack open the door to why the power of thought isn't just pure fantasy. It connects with the notion that the universe responds to consciousness in some way. Now, let's zoom in from the vast scale of physics to something much more personal, your own brain. Because the science of the mind itself gives even more weight to the idea that thoughts can change reality, starting with the reality of you. Ever heard the phrase neurons that fire together, wire together? This is a catchphrase for neuroplasticity, the remarkable ability of your brain to rewire and reshape itself based on what you think, feel, and experience. Neuroscience has discovered that our brain is not a fixed machine. It's more like a living, plastic, moldable organ that changes with experience and repeated thought patterns. When you practice a skill or even imagine practicing it, specific neural pathways strengthen. Literally, thoughts change the physical structure of your brain. For example, if you constantly think positive, empowering thoughts, over time the circuits for optimism and resilience become stronger. The synapses, connections between neurons involved in positive thinking, get reinforced. On the flip side, if you dwell on stress and worry all the time, those are the circuits that beef up, making it easier to feel stressed and worried. In a very real sense, your thoughts sculpt your brain, which in turn affects your habits, behaviors, and even your perception of the world. Now, how does this connect to health, wellness, and aging? There's amazing research showing that mindset matters for our physical health and longevity. One famous long-term study looked at the diaries of nuns written when they were in their early 20s. Decades later, those who had expressed more positive emotions and outlook in their youth tended to live significantly longer, by 7 to 10 years on average, than those who had more negative or neutral writings. In fact, the most cheerful nuns had a much lower risk of dying in old age than the least cheerful, suggesting that a positive mental attitude early in life was strongly associated with longevity. That's a real-world correlation between thought patterns and lifespan. Another extraordinary example comes from psychologist Ellen Liner's famous 1979 counterclockwise experiment on aging. She took a group of elderly men in their 70s and immersed them in a retreat designed to look and feel like the year 1959, about 20 years earlier than the actual date. The men were encouraged to think and act as if it truly were 1959, reminiscing in present tense and doing everything for themselves without being treated as old. The results after just 1 week were astonishing. The men showed improvements in physical strength, posture, memory, hearing, and vision compared to a control group. Observers even said the men looked younger. Independent judges compared photos and judged that they appear on average 2 years younger than before. Some of these gentlemen who had walked in with canes ended up playing an impromptu game of touch football by the end of the week. Now that study, while amazing, had a small sample and wasn't published in a peer-reviewed journal at the time, so scientists consider it intriguing but not ironclad proof. Still, it shows the potential of mindset. By mentally placing themselves in a younger time, the men's bodies responded, mind over body to an extent. And it aligns with other research. Having a positive view of aging can actually affect your health outcomes as you age, whereas believing that aging means inevitable decline can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Neuroscience also shows how stress, which often begins in the mind, can accelerate aging, such as through shortening telomeres, the protective caps on your DNA. Conversely, practices that reduce stress, like mindfulness meditation or maintaining an optimistic outlook, have been linked to better immune function and possibly slower biological aging. In short, the brain and body are deeply connected, and our thoughts are often the bridge between the two. So in this section we learned, thoughts reshape your brain. That's neuroplasticity. And those brain changes can translate into real-life changes in your body and behavior. A mindset geared toward positivity and possibility can literally be life-extending, while a mindset of helplessness or chronic negativity can harm your health. It's a strong case for thoughts become things, starting from the inside out. Remember to like this video if you found it enlightening. It really helps the channel, and subscribe for more deep dives into energy, transformation, and awakening. We have plenty more fascinating topics coming up, blending science and spirituality in a way that's accessible and life-changing. And hey, hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next episode. Thank you for watching and being a part of this exploration. Until next time, keep those thoughts positive, keep that energy high, and watch how your world begins to reflect the best version of what you hold in mind. After all, thoughts become things, so make them good ones.